Now, this is an interesting one because this is a science fiction book that is written in the way that I like my science fiction books to be written, which is to say, it's definitely not going to be for everyone. And the book we're talking about today is going to be Darwin's Radio by Greg Bear. And this is the Patreon pick for the month of October. And this was picked by Fiona Moore. So thank you, Fiona, for suggesting this book for me to read. Now, like I said, this is written in a way that I like my science fiction books to be written. Now, that is not to say that this is a perfect book or that it doesn't have flaws or things that I'm going to nitpick here and there or drawbacks even. I'm not even going to say that I loved this book. I just liked it. But I liked it a lot in certain ways that I feel like are not going to necessarily translate to the typical reader, I think. First things first, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. I will not be discussing spoilers in any meaningful way in this review, just in case somebody hasn't read this book. I definitely hadn't read it, even though it is old. It's a little bit more obscure. It's not exactly super popular. At least I didn't think it was. Now, I personally have never read a Greg Bear book before, and this will be my first introduction to him, his style, his writing, everything about him. And I will definitely be checking out more of his books in the future. This was written shockingly well. I mean, just so well. The language is really good. It's well written. I like the voice, like the narrative voice of the author. The prose is not purple. It's not flashy. It's not over the top. Nothing like that. It's just really slick, smart, intelligent, well presented, well written, well thought out. I don't know. It just felt good to read. His writing is very nice. It appealed to me personally. I don't know how to explain it. It's really slick, sharp, and smart without feeling like it's been dumbed down for you in any way, shape, or form, but at the same time, it's not purple. And this is a science fiction book that is way more focused on the science than it is the fiction, which is where it's going to buck a lot of people off, and which is where I kind of nestled right in and I felt right at home because I read a lot of those kinds of books and I like a lot of those kinds of books. Darwin's Radio is essentially a book about this virus that is going to trigger an evolutionary response inside of humanity. And then we're going to have multiple groups of people with multiple groups of thought. What is this? Why is it happening? How is it happening? What is the mechanism by which it's happening? And then what is it doing? And what is the appropriate line of action and response that we should be having? Some people are convinced that it is like an evolutionary step. Humanity's taking its next step into the future. Other people, it is a virus. We need to take care of it. We need to be treating it as though it were a virus. We need to be making vaccines and quelling it and tamping it down, while other people are arguing for different things. And then we have these archaeological digs that are finding Neanderthals with similar evolutionary responses, and we're going to try and reconcile what's happening now with what's happening back then. Is it the same thing happening now that's happening back then? And then we're going to have these characters and their arcs and their developments overlaid on top of the science, and those feel like they are much less interesting to the author than the actual science is. He's way more interested in really just having those scientific debates between the different characters and what this means and what that means, and what this, if this is what's happening, then what does it say about evolution as a whole, like the entire thing, not just this little bubble that we're in. It's a lot. And like I said, he nestles right into it, which made me nestle right into the storytelling because I tend to like those kinds of books. This is not going to be for everyone. I also thought that this book was going to cover a lot more ground narratively, a lot more time narratively. Much more was going to happen in that sense. And about a third of the way into the book, I realized, this book is in, first off, no hurry to get anywhere narratively, and that's not the point. And I very quickly at that point is when I realized, I think it's going to encapsulate this one little part of what's happening, and the climax is going to be the event that ultimately is the climax of this book. I won't tell you what it is. But I very quickly was like, oh, that's good, because I thought that was going to happen earlier in the book, and we'd move on and we'd have more conversations beyond that point. No, there's a very small little window. We have our end goal that we're trying to get to, and it's a much shorter end goal than I expected from a narrative perspective. So it's like I said, he's in no hurry to get anywhere. It's going to move very slowly and very deliberately, and we're going to have one conversation with one very clear end point, at least once it became very clear to me that that was going to be the end point. It is not going to have multiple conversations, and we're not going to try and leapfrog forward into the story to have more conversations. It is just the one, and we're going to go very deep into it. Then the main conflict of the story is really just a conflict of ideas and approaches and how people are looking at this. There is some more pressure that is put that creates a little bit more conflict, and there is some legitimate, genuine fears that people have as they go throughout the story and maybe push against what is expected or what the scientific status quo might be, and they might have like actual concerns going throughout the story, but those always feel like they take a backseat to the conflict being just a clash of ideas and how to approach this and how we move forward with this, and the small subsect that's going to maybe go off in a different direction and be like, let's try and think of this differently, and we're going to risk the repercussions of not following the pack and not following along with what we're actually being told to do from the larger scientific community at large. And I want to repeat again really fast before I move on, but this is so good. It's so well written. I loved everything about the way that he was writing this story, about the way that he handled everything, the subject matter, the science, everything. I loved this writing style. Was awesome. I really liked it. That being said, I didn't care much for the subject matter. I wasn't super interested in the idea. I wasn't super interested in the discussion being had. That idea of evolution and what is happening and how it works and all of the intricacies of it, and he would dive into it and he'd delve into it, and I'd find myself not entirely caring, because I don't entirely care about that topic. If this were a topic that I would have found more interesting to me, more in line with my interests, the things that I find fascinating to read, I would have probably been just raving about this book right now, how much I loved it. And I did love the way that he approached the subject matter. Like I said, if it was a different topic, I would have been just eating it up. But it was not my favorite subject, and I wasn't super invested in the subject. Then on top of that, the characters aren't super great either. They're not exactly engaging. They're not exactly something you're going to meaty characters with great arcs or anything like that. They're just not super investing, and I wasn't super invested in them. Now, that being said, I am a huge fan of classic science fiction. I do not need characters in my science fiction whatsoever. You can give me paper thin characters and give me a good science fiction book, and I'm right in there. Science fiction is one of my favorite genres of all time. Classic science fiction, one of my favorites as well. Like just I don't need characters, but when I have a subject matter that I'm not super interested in, but you got maybe say good characters, and I got something else to latch onto, I guess is what I'm saying. I didn't have the characters to latch onto, and I didn't have the subject matter to latch onto. So I was kind of nebulously floating around there in the book for a while, and I just didn't have a whole lot to hold on to. Luckily for me, I had Greg Bear's writing and the way that he was coming at it, and the way that he was doing the book was done in a style and a way that I really, really, really like. So I was able to kind of carry myself through with that. Now, that being said, if that sentence made any sense, that all being said, I can see if you are super interested in evolution, or you are super interested in how viruses work, or even if there is a connection between the two, or if there is, how that would work. And like, if this is a subject that you're interested in, I can see you being just fully locked in, and this just being absolutely amazing. At the same time, if you're not interested in evolution and you're not interested in the science of the science fiction and really having some of those discussions and all of that, maybe just stay away from this one. This one might not be for you. But after all of that said and done, this wasn't like, say, the greatest book that I've ever read, and I'm not going to give it some 10 out of 10 because, evolution's just maybe not my favorite thing to read about. Although I will say, after finishing the book, I am quite excited to get into more books from Greg Bear, because if I can find a subject matter that lines up with something that I'm quite interested in, and he marries it with his writing style that, even similar to this book, I think I might have found an author that I really can connect with, that I can really read and just enjoy on a very basic level. So I'm looking forward to reading more Greg Bear. I would say this particular book, I'd give it probably a good 7 out of 10. It was definitely above average, definitely a good book. And it probably would have been an 8 or a 9 easy if I just was more interested in that subject that he was having a discussion about. Anyway, everybody, as always, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.